evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture. And it certainly is beloved. We're feeling the love as we are about to roll into our 74th season here at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater for 2023. But we are focused today, joined as always with my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, my friend.
Hello.
Co-owner, projectionist, King Jeff. Say hello, my friend.
Hi, everybody.
Assistant projectionist, Mikey Drumbore in the house. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
And new to at least the Mahoning podcast ears, Bob Weir, who is the previous owner of the Bear Drive-In, and most recently has become more of a tech position here at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, which this podcast will be focused on. Say hello, Bob, so they know what you sound like.
Hello, everyone.
So it will be announced for anybody out there, the Mahoning has done a little upgrade. Well, do we want to call it an upgrade? We did some work in the off season, and we wanted to go a little bit deeper into that work with the boys who made this magic happen in Bob, Mike, and the projection team. So that's why we're here. And it goes a little bit deeper, which is why we wanted to come here to the podcast. I'm sure people may have noticed, that some movies up on the Mahoning screen last season didn't look as great as they could have looked. And that certainly wasn't falling on the blind eye. We were kind of tied down to situations that we had going on, mainly financially. This is the podcast where we're going to let people know. We were involved in an ongoing lawsuit with Brown Paper Tickets, our previous ticketing company. And the issue there was that simply they decided they weren't going to pay us once the pandemic hit. So all the success that we had in 2020 really kind of hit us hard. As great as it was, we had a huge deficit that we had to face going into our 2022 season. And that's kind of the reasoning why we weren't able to get this work done sooner. It was a big undertaking, but why don't we go to Jeff right at the heart of it to kind of explain a little bit more on the projection situation as it was before we made this upgrade.
So as Virgil said, last couple of years, we haven't been able to put a lot of money into the system. So we were stuck with a system that we couldn't advance any further. Originally, years ago, when everybody thought the picture looked great, we had 4,000 watt bulbs. Last few years, we've had 4,500 watt bulbs. So 500 watts brighter, and it still wasn't doing the job. Oh, some prints look great. They look fine. In fact, I would say maybe 50% of them, maybe a little bit more, look okay. But now with digital, you can have really dark scenes that in an indoor theater will look fine. But at a drive-in, doesn't have as many foot lamberts on the screen. It's very dark. We had to improve on that or find a way to improve on that. So we had to change out the rectifiers because they were at their limits. They couldn't go. In fact, we were starting to burn one out because it was at its limit with a 4,500 watt bulb.
Yeah, that's definitely worth mentioning. The fact that, we kind of hit that wall where the equipment started to give us issues, and because of the financial restraints and because of our insane schedule, it's not easy to just jump in, fully replace, your entire unit and jump back in while you're mid-season. So
Exactly.
This was something that we were planning on for a very long time. And I think that burnout on the cells, on the burnout of the original rectifier, really kind of started this thing in motion. And that was, mid last year? So
yeah,
Mid-year.
Yeah. And we originally, what we tried to do was find an exact replacement for it. We actually took a trip out to, what's the name of that drive-in? The Gem, right?
Gem.
yeah,
The Gem.
yeah.
Crazy Bob's,
Yeah.
we call it. and picked up this massive, and I mean massive rectifier, gutted it out of the wall, pulled it from its electric housing, all that other stuff, loaded it into the back of Carl's truck, almost broke our backs getting it to the theater, only to find, this wasn't the move, like for us to put this in, we're still limited on how bright the bulbs can get or how much we can grow from that. So not to cut your story off.
Can I jump in and have someone define for our listening audience what a rectifier is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So Jeff, well, many people have corrected me, but from my knowledge, the power that comes from the powerhouse leads to the rectifier, which distributes the correct amount of power to whatever you're looking to feed electricity to. So
No.
pretty important unit.
Yeah, and you're right, and it kind of pushed us. I think Mike said it kind of pushed us mid-season last year to say we got to look at this sooner than later. Now the problem was, even though they both had 4,500 watt bulbs, the one lamp house was 120 volts, the other lamp house was 220 volts. So we needed a different rectifier for each lamp house, and that's what we had. And the one that sat on the cement slab, this won't mean anything to the people out there, but the one was starting to burn up, and the other one didn't have a problem. It was moving along real nice. But the thing is, in order to go higher than 4,500 watts, we had to get new rectifiers and new lamp houses.
Yeah.
And so we finally were able to do that during this off season.
And it was always a balancing act, at least in my run there. We've always had that situation as far as the rectifiers go, two different rectifiers. And maybe you can let me know, Jeff, when we put in the reel-to-reel system or reinstalled the reel-to-reel system, they weren't matching from the beginning, correct? The lamp housing?
No, correct. The one on the left was a Super 80, which is like from the 80s, somewhere around there. The one on the right was an X60, which goes back to like late 60s, early 70s. It was one of the first xenon lamp houses. The trouble is, the Super 80 was a 120 volt base power for the fan and all that stuff. The X60 was a 220 volt. So we couldn't even use so that's why we had the two different rectifiers. But the balancing act mostly was from the fact that the reflector in the Super 80 was in beautiful condition. The reflector in the X60, because we couldn't find another one, was dented. It was dinged from bulb explosions. And we were always trying to balance the two projectors. It was a pain in the butt. We got them close, but they were never quite exact.
Yeah, and honestly, anybody who is a fan of the Mahoning, they have experienced these projectors we're talking about. And the picture at the Mahoning is stunning. There's nothing to take away from the picture. I think what really kind of hit us was a mixture of the eye getting used to the digital and also our equipment kind of puttering a bit on us. And it was really nice that I think it was the right timing, I think, for the picture to kind of hit us and say, hey, what can we do to make this even better? Because we have become such a film mecca in this industry, and we work with giants, and we want everything to be as pristine, perfect, and beautiful as possible when it comes to 35 millimeter presentation. And to have ourselves kind of tied last year, it was very difficult, but thank God we have the team that we have with us that came in at the right time. As you guys know, you met Mike on a previous podcast, but he came in to assist Robert with all the 35 millimeter work that we do at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. And he really took the knowledge to the next level. And I mean knowledge, the type of guy that will study manuals front and back, know every single piece.
Yep.
I guess maybe that's a little way to kind of push and segue into your role in this, Mike, because you were there when we started first originally talking about it, when that original rectifier started giving us troubles last year. So was that kind of the motivator for you to kind of really dig your teeth into our system specifically?
Yeah, that really helped to make me more and more interested. It's like, okay, if I'm going to try to figure out what we can do and try to better understand what other tech is out there to improve our existing system, I have to understand how it all works. So researching different types of xenon power supplies, and to maybe give our fans a little bit more background on what the rectifier actually does. So the power we have coming in is 220 volt, three-phase AC power. A xenon lamp needs DC power to function. So the rectifier, I'm not familiar with the science behind it, but it converts that AC into DC power. So you're getting the correct type of power needed to get the bulb to function properly.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time reading the manuals on our existing system. They were both Strongs from two different eras, but both strong traditional rectifiers using magnets to convert that power, and then started looking into more modern electronic power supplies that have a lot more circuit boards in them to do the job. So that was the route we needed to really look into, because those are more available than older technology, and Strong still has the parts to be able to refurbish those if need be as well. So that's also a plus. If there's ever an issue with these, we could pack it up, ship it to Strong, and they can refurbish it and get it back to like new again.
Right.
And that's fantastic, because the older rectifiers, my older tech was always like trying to find, well, I don't know if I can find those parts anymore and stuff. And it was just getting to be a hassle. But what I want to understand to folks is, it's not like we've jumped years ahead in time. This is still old equipment we're talking about. It's new to us,
Right.
but it's still like 30, 40 years old. So it is still age appropriate to what we're doing. This is not some space age lamp house. This is still old technology, but it is repairable technology.
Right. And that's the beauty of it, is that we have been able to kind of bring the Mahoning up to date a bit, and more than anything, it just allows us to be able to work with the equipment. I mean, looking at the rectifiers, you could tell it was something from, 1960, that it was just so kind of archaic, and even moving it around, as we saw physically, these things aren't meant to be hauled all over the place. They're meant to kind of sit there forever and last forever. So things really propelled forward when we, Bob has always been a friend to the Mahoning. He's coming to the lot, regular on the lot. But really toward the end of the season last year, he started getting friendlier with you, Jeff, and really all of us on the crew, to the point he'd be hanging out in the booth. So much so that we invited him to the crew party at the end of the season, which is a tradition for us. And from my memory, and you can tell the story, Bob, but I remember all of us together, and kind of consoling in each other about the season, how things went, and eventually talking about the picture and the system that we have. And you and Jeff at a certain point were sitting together chatting about things that kind of started getting the ball rolling. So why don't you pick up the story from there?
Well, I definitely enjoyed the documentary that you guys did. I mean, it stems back to the documentary. I was flipping through some channels and I came across it and I started watching it, and I saw everything that you guys have done to when you guys first got together and you were getting ready for the season and you were opening up. And being a tech, I've been doing tech stuff for a very long time. When I saw the image of the projection booth, that's when I noticed the two lamp houses were a little different.
Yeah.
And first thing that went through my brain was, there's no way that they're producing the same image. They're going to be close, but I'm a bit of stickler for detail. And it just so happens that I might have a few pieces of equipment in a cargo container, in a shed, in a garage, and my living room.
Right.
No.
That, from my memory, you had popped by, and at a certain point you had sold us a lamp house, a refurbed lamp house, So that's an early memory of you being on the lot, and clearly a connection to the path to where we are now.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I reached out, figured out what Jeff's phone number was, gave him a call, and I said, "Hey, I've got this lamp house sitting here. I know I'm not going to do anything with it. It would make a perfect fit. It would match the one you have." Now, mind you, I couldn't see exactly which one the projector one was, but I knew that
Yeah.
mine was identical to it, at least very close to it. Like you, it was a super, mine's an ultra. So
Right.
I asked if you were interested. It was one that I knew I was never going to use again. So I brought it up. You took a look at it, and you said, "Sure, we'll take it." And when I came back up, I guess it was about the mid-season when you guys were really starting to have the problem with the one rectifier. I started noticing the quality of the image and talked to Jeff. I said, "Jeff, let's figure out if we can get some rectifiers for the lamp house. See if we can find another one and start figuring out how we can switch them out and increase the wattage at the same time and put the image back up the way it was meant to be."
Yeah. And that was
Yep.
always the kind of strike where it's like, we never had an issue with the picture. It was pretty clear that the rectifier issue was the culprit. And this was two birds with one stone, which Jeff loves to do. And we've done many times throughout our careers together. It's, if we're going to jump into this, let's also take it to the next step and do some things that we've been wanting to do. And matching twins sitting in that booth is something and Jeff, I'm sure, has long dreamed of.
Absolutely. I wanted those two lamp houses to be the same for years, and because of the voltage difference and the difference in the two rectifiers, we just couldn't put it together until Bob came along. And he had that Ultra 80, and I knew there was one at the Gem, and I thought, if we can find a matching set of rectifiers, this just might work.
Yeah.
So we kind of started putting two and two together last year, like Bob said, and it's turned out fantastic. Now we have a matching set of projectors. We've got one smokestack, if you will, that we have to replace with the correct size. But other than that, we finally do have a matching set of projectors that look well together. They perform well together. And we have some headroom. If we have to go up a little bit, if we have to go to 55, we could try it because the equipment will handle it. So we'll see what happens.
Right.
Well, the best part is not only can we go up a little bit, we can go up a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go up a lot of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can handle up to 7,000 watts.
Right.
And just so just to give you the listeners an idea of what it is, a portion of what we're talking about. The lamp houses have a lamp in them that produce an electrical arc, sort of on the same line as a welder. So when you
Yeah.
see scenes in different TVs or movies where you're seeing this really bright light and the guy's got the face mask on and everything, if you look directly in that light, you will go blind.
Yeah.
So we use protective gear when we're dealing with the bulbs. We use protective gear when we're actually looking at the lamps when they're lit. But it works on the same principle as an arc welder. So that should help give everybody an idea of what we're looking at.
Right. Paint a picture, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike, you can likely paint a picture as far as what went into the detailing of these projectors, or I'm sorry, these lamp houses, because getting them was one thing, but the condition they were in, getting them up to snuff, you really did an amazing job truly detailing these things from in and out.
Yeah, so the one that Bob had sold to us was pristine inside and out. I think the hour meter on it only read about 100 hours on it, so it's virtually like new. All I had to do was take the tape off of it that he put on to keep dust from getting inside while it was out of service.
Right.
The other one, as Jeff said, we got from the Gem as well, where that one rectifier we couldn't use came from.
Yeah.
That one had sat in the booth out of service for
That drive-in's been closed
decades.
at least 10 years. 10
Right.
years.
Yeah, it was used heavy, it was used a lot, and sitting out of service for 10 years. It had bird dirt all over it. It was dirty.
Yeah.
So I brought it home and into my garage and just started scrubbing it, cleaning it inside and out to get it to look nice again instead of like something that had been sitting in a barn for 10 years.
Yeah.
Were you able to kind of use a mix of your knowledge and a pristine lamp house there to kind of, do the surgery on these things when it comes to taking individual mechanics out of it?
What I was taught by another tech friend of mine is whenever you're taking something apart, is to take a million reference photos.
Yeah.
So I only had one lamp house at my house at a time because, well, I've got a garage full of projection equipment too right now. So space is a little limited.
Right.
So I sat there with the manual and with my phone. Just anytime I started to take something apart, I took pictures of every step of the way, took some notes, so that way when I eventually got everything cleaned, I could go back and put it all back together exactly how it was.
Right.
And also my favorite little trick that I came up with for refurbishing the projector I'm going to have for home use is I take an egg carton and a label maker. So every little egg holder in the carton gets a label on it for what screws or bolts or whatever is being put in there.
Man.
So I know, okay, these are the bolts that hold the blower motor in. These are all the bolts for the side panel.
Yeah.
So that way I know which bolts go back where when I eventually go back and put it back together after it's been cleaned and gone over.
And we're talking about hundreds of parts. I mean, more thousands. Like the amount of pieces that you were able to kind of work on. We're talking about truly like a surgical project, and it was masterful. Like seeing it come back to life and be in such good shape. I'd say you could we did put these puppies back to back, and that one that you brought in, Bob, was professionally refurbed.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It wasn't refurbed. That one was purchased with another one with some old supers, brand spanking new, and were only used for one season.
Oh, yeah. So that was the thing. It was practically brand new.
Yeah, it was practically brand. There was no furbishing. It just never got used.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So we have these twins, these lamp houses to put in. We were able to find twin rectifiers up to date, at least more up to date than our last rectifiers. What was that process as far as getting the power to the lamp houses? Because that was my whole thing, is how easy could it be to, bring in new power supplies? I assumed we were kind of locked in because of the wiring underground, everything else, but pleasantly we found that these things were able to be put in, but not without some work. And maybe you guys can explain a little bit more or better than I could.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting is you guys kept giving me reasons to drive over 2 hours to come up to the drive-in. And I didn't mind that at all. That was great. It's like, I'm telling work, I was like, I got to leave now because I got to go to the drive-in.
Gotta come hang with the
At a winner, and they're like, what? And I was like, don't worry about it. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Secret project.
So the interesting thing was you'd mentioned that you had an electrician that was friendly to the drive-in. And I said, well, if we can all get together, I definitely need to see what kind of power you have. And then I can give him an idea of what we can do, how we can do it, the most efficient, cost-effective way, and get it done.
And that's what we were able to do. And that was really step number one. Are we able to get these current rectifiers hooked in with the power to lead to the lamp houses? And once we were able to do that, it was a matter of running the new piping, correct, and the new wiring, which we all got through strong, right?
Oh, definitely. We got that through strong, and amazingly enough, I mean, we're talking about a company that has been around since the 50s as far as providing lamp houses and light for 35 millimeter projectors. They actually do some other stuff. They were purchased out by a company called Ballantine, which also did projectors, and then picked up by Leviton, if I'm not mistaken. And then after sales started dropping off and everything went digital, they kind of just wanted to get rid of the company. And this guy, Paul, purchased Strong and kept it going.
Yeah. And Paul is a gem. We're going to have him on for an upcoming podcast. I know both Mike, Bob, Jeff, myself, the people across the country who work with Strong have a relationship with him. And he was such a champion in assisting us along the way to say, hey, why don't you guys try this out? Maybe this is an option. Maybe you guys could do this. And I know he was there for you too, Mike, right?
Yeah, Paul was great. So when I was going through cleaning and kind of evaluating that lamp house because it had been out of service for so long, I was talking to him on my way home from work one day, just like, hey, Paul, what do I need to look for? What are some big gotchas or big red flags as I'm looking through checking all the wiring connections, or what could be an issue that when we install this, it's not going to work, that I could try to assess and try to address now before we get to that point.
Save the heartache out the gate. Yeah.
And he was absolutely great taking the time to talk with me, because I had never gone this in depth with a lamp house like this before. So he was a great asset in helping me out.
Yeah, we couldn't have been luckier. And really, there was this culmination, this feeling of like, okay, we've got the bulbs, we've got the new reflectors, we've got the lamp houses, we've got the rectifiers, we've got everything that we need in place. Everything's been hooked up with such love and care, as you said, with help along the way from the industry, and it's go time. It's go time. The idea that is this going to work?
Yeah.
So we assembled all of us together, literally all of us, and Bob, why don't you explain that moment of, okay, let's get this thing up and off the ground.
Well, there were definitely some videos taken while in the process of doing that. But the one moment, of course, is the camera was not on to record the look on your face. Basically, like we went right down the line. We flipped the main breaker. We made sure they were plugged in. We turned on the breakers on the rectifiers. And we get over to the projectors, and when we flipped the main breaker on the rectifier, we heard the fans light up. We saw the LED, the indication LEDs light up, and we went over, and I said, "You guys ready?" You go, "Sure." And we flipped the switch, and everything shuts off. It just shut off. And unfortunately, I sometimes don't necessarily filter what I say, and the first words out of my mouth were, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen."
Yeah, I picked my heart up from my feet.
Everybody's face got real long. Their jaws almost hit the ground. And was like, okay. So I flipped the switch back. The fan came back on. It did pop the breaker on the rectifier, and I went back in, opened up the lids, went through all of the wiring, went through all of the notes that I had from Strong and everything, and I said, no, everything is right. Why am I missing something? So I said, okay, it's not the lamp house. The lamp house is fine. I know that's good. So I went back to the rectifier. Now, when the conversion came from running from reel to reel to platter systems, they started building projectors in consoles, these big consoles with all the electronics and all the switches and everything on how to operate it and the whole bit.
Yep.
And these rectifiers were made for dual purpose. One was for console and one was for independent. And the switches that you kind of sort of can't see, that are in the corner of where the plug plugs in, and it's kind of dark and you can't really see it, they were flipped to console. So we literally flipped the switches over, and they weren't marked either. So that was the other thing. And I was like, this is the only thing that's left. So I went back out, looked it up, and I said, console, independent. I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better. And I said, okay, I'm going to give it another try. Flipped it on, and it came on. Beautiful, bright white light. Everybody started screaming with happiness.
Yeah, and that was, it was a long time coming. Not only a lot of work gone into it, months of work, but so much had gone into it. And just to know, like, okay, this is functioning, because that was the big gamble. I know at a certain point, Bob, you had looked at Jeff and said, this is it. No turning back now.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
we're making the decision.
this is go, no go. If you say go, this stuff comes out, and we're going to be very hard pressed to try and have to put it back.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly what I said. I said, once these rectifiers come out, we're committed. We got to do the whole thing. There's no half-assed about it. It's got to be done.
Yeah. And that bink of the lamp coming on was just it was like hitting the finish line in a way.
Yeah.
But of course, like anything else, that wasn't the finish line. So much had to go into it. When it comes to the balance on both projectors, Mike or Bob or Jeff, you guys can talk a bit about it. So replacing the lamp's one thing, balancing that picture's another thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing we do while we are in the process of wiring this up is taking a focus lens and putting it into the front of the projector and literally running a string directly through the entire machine to make sure it's completely lined up.
Right.
And we make sure it's lined up, and we make sure everything is as close to that little square, that little frame of picture that goes to the projector, as close as we can to center as possible. And once we got that all lined up, then we finished assembling the rest of the lamp house itself. And again, Michael spent a lot of time cleaning those projectors up, and they look fantastic. I mean,
yes, they do.
You could stick those things on a 1940s showroom, and they would look that good.
Yep, absolutely. He did great on those things.
So we
Still got some work to do, but thank you.
Yeah. So we got them all lined up. We got them all wired up. And when we fired up the projector, the one thing we unfortunately, the process is you turn them on and you just shoot light out the hole. And you hit the screen. And what you have to do is just balance the light in circles, because you're coming off of a reflector in the back of the lamp house. And as much as you have the rectifier or the lamp house lined up with the projector, it's, you always have, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 adjustments from the front of the projector to the back of the projector that have to be done in synchronous in order to get the maximum amount of light out. And make sure that you don't do any damage to the projector or the lamp house, because that can happen.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple of reels of film, and after we did the best we could as far as what we had lined up, I guess it was 2 weeks ago Sunday?
Yeah.
2 Sundays ago?
Yeah, I think so.
We put an image on the screen, and we literally saw the difference already.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely saw a much cleaner, brighter picture, like right off the get-go.
Yeah, and that was the thing is, we knew going into this thing that there was no turning back. And going into this, it's not like, hey, we're going digital. The upgrade was meant to be incredibly gradual, and there's reasoning behind that. And again, for the layman who might be listening, or the new film fan who might be listening, you can't just toss in a huge, big, bright bulb and hope that you're good to go, because at a certain point, you're throwing off more heat than the film can take, and you're blistering and burning film. And in our case, you're blistering and burning some of the rarest film on the planet. So that was the whole idea behind the gradual step. Am I correct, Jeff?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, now we're at 5,000, up from 4,500. I think, in my opinion, if we had to go to 5,500, we could do that too. Do I think we could ever do 7? No. I think that would start to damage the film and possibly the head. But 55, yeah, I'd say that's possible, but we'll take it in steps. Like you said, we won't go up unless we have to.
Yeah, and some people might be asking, like, what would call for 70? And in that case, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, 70 mil. The idea that you're going to have to throw that much light, especially outdoors, is likely the case.
If we had to go to 7,000, we would have to get water-cooled heads, which would ruin the historical accuracy of the projection booth, because those are the original projectors. So that's
Right.
another reason I wouldn't want to go that high.
Yeah, the Ultra 80s, they were one of their main purposes for design, the lamp houses, was for 70 millimeter installations, because they can run up to a 7,000, and some models ran up to 10,000 watt lamps. So
Right.
they would often be used in for 70 millimeter projection and also for follow spots.
And at a certain point, like you said, it gets to the point where it's too hot. And that's something that's cool to mention, as you just did, Jeff, the water cooled system. So we ran into this, the idea that it's like, okay, you're throwing so much heat that eventually in the process somebody created a system to cool down the heads. Maybe you can explain that a little bit better. Any of you guys could probably explain that a little bit better.
Yeah, sure, because I used to run carbon arc lamp houses. That's how I learned.
Yeah.
And carbon arc lamp houses at drive-ins were water cooled. Not only were the heads cooled, but the jaws that held the carbon arcs were also water cooled. They had a little pump, pump that stood on like like a drum of what popcorn oil might come in. It stood on it stood on a drum, and it had a big circulator in it, and it circulated water through the jaws of the carbon arc lamp house. And then you might have another circulator that, if you had a water cooled head, like a Brenkert or something like that, would not Brenkert. I ran Brenkerts once, but anyway, so you have some water cooled heads because of the lamps. You just have to.
Yeah.
Now the problem here is, and this is interesting for the folks out there, and what I thought was interesting too, the Mahoning Drive-In Theater was the only theater on the East Coast that had E7s put in it. Almost every other theater on the East Coast, except for the Mahoning, had Brenkerts, maybe Centuries, stuff that could be, where you had water-cooled gates, stuff like that. For some reason, the guys that built the Mahoning, they were brand new at the time, but they had E7s put in, which are not water-cooled heads. And don't know why, but it was the only drive-in on the East Coast that had E7s. Well, we still have them, and we're trying to keep them. So, we're a little bit limited as far as, we can't water cool them, but they do have heat filters, which are working very well. We have a very strong exhaust. We might even be able to get it to be more powerful in the future if we have to go up another couple of watts.
Yep.
So we have some headroom.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And the whole idea, again, of assembling you guys together to go into a bit more detail is, we heard it. Yeah, and I think that there's something very powerful in us sharing our story, and that's kind of who the Mahoning is. And at least since our success with the documentary and everything else, is we are that business that likes to kind of let everything out there and never judge a book by its cover. In this case, we had endless amount of hurdles and things that, to really kind of break it down, could have ended the Mahoning. People thought, oh, geez, the solar panel farm coming in, that's the thing that's, inevitably going to bury the drive-in. No, for us, it was recovering from an unbelievable deficit. And the only reason that we were able to do that and are still here is because every single fan stuck with us. Every single fan knew our story and who we are. And that's why this, more than anything, is such a win for us, is that we can truly stand on this number one platform as far as the drive-in and 35 millimeter presentation goes, and proudly say, hey, we're doing everything that we can. We are addressing every single thing that we can to make sure that that picture and presentation is as good as can be. And the future is looking so bright. I'm just so thankful and excited for all of you guys, not just out there, but thankful for every single person on this call right now.
Well, I want to publicly thank Bob myself, because I said, Bob, make sure last time I saw him last weekend, I said, Bob, make sure you send me your bill, which he did a couple days later. And I thought, man, Bob is a great guy. Look at this. This bill, this is nothing.
He's a friend, right? It's
he's a good buddy compared to the time that he put in. And Mike is, he works for us, so we can reimburse him in other ways, especially for the parts that he bought. But Bob is not really an employee, so Bob is like, he could have hit me with a bill, and I would have said, well, yep, that's fair, But it was next to nothing, all the work that he put in. So I really appreciate it, Bob, and I'm glad you're going to be here in the future.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, it means the world. And, we had many a heart-to-heart about the situation and how and where we can make this thing happen. And the fact that it's all been able to come together, it's very, just like everything here at the Mahoning, it's very destined. The fact that, you were a part of our family and then became a true part of the family just at the right time. And
yeah.
Well, anything else that you guys want to add in this this process? I don't want to leave anything out. I don't want to leave anybody in the dark.
Cute.
Out the gate, in the dark. Like, there's a lot of projection talk.
Yeah, there's a little bit of reference to what we've been talking about for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely a pleasure and an honor to come up and get to play with 35s again, because I've been doing this for so long. It's interesting because if you were to look at my resume, it wouldn't be so much about just accomplishments about what I've been doing with my life. It's more like, can't you hold a job anywhere?
Well, you are that guy. You've been everywhere. That's the beauty.
It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure, because it's just the thing is just looking at the expressions on people's faces that are just, coming to see a movie. It's the family element. It's the first date element. And I think I heard a podcast or two where somebody was saying, "Oh, I was conceived in a drive-in." I'm like, okay. Well, I wish I was there for that. No, I'm just kidding.
The big joke is that the population boom started in 1950, because the Mahoning opened in 49. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, I definitely enjoyed it. It's gonna, it's 35 millimeter. It's definitely an ongoing process. I mean, we've done a lot. We have definitely done a lot pushing these things into the next century, and there's still more to do. I'm not gonna lie. And then that's what we're gonna work on.
That's right. That's beautiful.
Yep.
And Mike, as far as your role in this, we can't thank you enough for taking such passion, such time. Again, you really are the perfect person to be wearing this hat, and to have somebody that's close. It's nice. Bob's not close in any way.
Well, you'd think he is, running up on a Wednesday night. Sit with me, run 2 reels of a film that may or may not be hitting the screen later this season.
Ooh, yeah.
So we can get the light balance between the two. Just, I call him on a Tuesday, because I was there last Monday running some tests, see how the picture looks between the two.
Yeah.
Talk to him on Tuesday, and he's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" It's like, "Well, I was planning on doing it this weekend. Just, what advice do you have?" It's like, no, weekend doesn't work for me. What are you doing tomorrow? I can be there tomorrow night, and we'll get this figured out. I'm like, "Oh shit! All right, I'll see you at the theater."
we're back in that mode. That is for sure. And the test runs, we're going to be, as we always do, running some film before we open, inviting the crew in as we prep the lot. And it feels really good going in. But again, as far as the point and purpose of this whole thing, we want to at least give people a means to go to and get a little bit deeper information as far as this project goes, how much and how passionate we are about 35 millimeter, what went into this, and anything else. So as you guys know, it will be shared on the social medias, but we really hope that you guys can come out, chat about it with us in the booth, because we have incredibly knowledgeable people there. We keep our 35 millimeter booth open every single night for this reason. What other theater goes out of their way to explain their projection issues, upgrades, whatever the case is? This is incredibly rare. And, we feel very, very lucky to be in this position to be able to share it with everybody out there. So,
right. It's important that the people that come by understand how they work, even on the simplest terms, how they work and how you can show film and how different it is from digital. And I gave Bob some praise, and I got to give Mike some praise too for digging into the technical end of this, because you used to have a license to run those machines. I know, because I had to have one. Nowadays, that doesn't exist anymore. So I'm happy that he's getting into this, because when the day comes that I can't do it anymore or can't show up anymore or whatever, I can rest easy. I can be happy knowing that Mike is up there. So when that day comes, I know I don't have to worry. So,
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you.
And, you know, as we found out in Mike's earlier podcast, this is Mike's childhood drive-in. He literally had been coming here, living in town his entire life. So the idea that he gets to help take it to the next level is very, very exciting. And honestly, it feels like a bit of a restart for us. You know, people didn't know what happened besides what was on the surface. We never wanted to go to crowdsource funding to help us out. We really, really were confident that if we kept doing what we were doing, we'd be able to carry through, you know?
Right,
And
right.
I think we did an amazing job, Jeff, and the whole team. Not to say that there weren't some hurdles, maybe some burnt bridges along the way, but for the most part, everybody was very, very understanding of our very unique situation.
Yeah, it was a very successful project, considering that we don't run 35 millimeter. Oh, well, we'll run one now and then because we still have one projector left and a platter. No, we do this full time almost. Like we say, we use our digital booth as a tool if we cannot find 35 millimeter. Most of the stuff we run is actual film on 74-year-old equipment, and I couldn't be happier with the way this turned out. It was fantastic. Thanks to Bob and Mike and, you know, the rest of the fellas. You know, it's great.
Yeah. Well, we're really excited. And again, be sure to grab your tickets. Everything's on sale now, mahoningdit.com, and spread the word. Really, really excited. And I think that covers us for this episode. So until next time, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.